Oh, look, Shad's here.
Hey guys, give me just a second. I'm getting... Oh, if I can do it this way. I forgot that Discord does the blur background. Vidya.
Shad, we're going to go live in like a second, so it'll come through the counter. Oh, well. Yeah, oh well.
Sorry about the delay, guys.
Hello and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, and to my right here is Matt. Well, no, that'd be left. Sorry, my camera's reversed and it's all messed up. So Matt's on the top, Shad's on the bottom. So this is the 4Corners podcast. This is our second live stream. And this week we have, well, I should say, how are you doing this week, gentlemen?
I'm doing all right.
Doing good.
Now recording.
Our
The robot's here too.
Craig, the robot, is
Yes.
recording for us.
Yes.
Craigbot's here with us.
Craigbot 5000. That just makes me think of the old Conan days, the Pimp Bot 5000. And he had Jonathan Harris come on just to insult it.
Absolutely.
So it's been nice weather here for the most part. What about you, gentlemen?
It was
been
hot.
good.
It's been hot. It's been like in the 80s. Like yesterday, I think like the last couple of days it was like 90 degrees. It's gonna be hot until like Friday, and then cool a little down. But yeah, it's nice. We're like spring is finally here. I'm just worried, as I've said before, that it's actually gonna be like 2 weeks of spring and then just like 90-degree days, and it's like I'm not ready. I don't want that. No, I'm not ready for that. This last couple of days being 90, it's like, okay, well, an aberration, but I don't want the hot weather. Not yet.
Yeah. So we have I would call it the 4Corners podcast special, which is we just found a bunch of weird old matches to watch. So we have a spicy assortment of matches tonight. So we're going to start off in 1995 with Chris Candido defending the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Dan Severn. Then we're going to bounce a couple years into the future, into 1998. I think it's October 14th. Like, it's real weird. I think we picked like 1995 and like an October 14th, 1998. So this is the NWA 50th anniversary show, and it's going to be Dan Severn defending that same championship against Lord Steven Regal. And there's going to be some interesting backstory to that one. And
Sure.
then we have, for the final match of the night, we have Memphis Championship Wrestling with William Regal at this point, taking on Bryan Danielson, still as the American Dragon. Which, fun fact, I found a bunch of matches of him like super early in his career with the mask still on, which I want to do.
Cool.
Which I want to do a show on in the near future, because there's a bunch of him and known anti-Semite Spanky having a bunch of matches.
Boy, that's a whole big mess to get into.
Yeah, that a lot of those are with Spanky, and I was kind of like, well, do I really want to do those? I'm like, well, we've done other noted pieces of crap, so I think it's fair game. So let's start off here. So the first match is from 1995, and this is how close was this place to where you live, Shad? Is it like closest, or is it like hours away?
So, the description puts it in Erlanger, Kentucky, which some people may hear that, Erlanger, that sounds real. No, it's right up there by Cincinnati. It would not take me terribly long to get there. I just hop on the interstate and I'll be there in pretty short order.
Okay.
But yeah, this is one of those northern Kentucky near Cincinnati communities that is like Louisville likes to act like it's not part of Kentucky.
Is it close enough to Cincinnati that you could conceivably say, oh, this is like a suburb? Or is it a little too far out for that?
I'd say maybe 15, 20 minutes out from Cincinnati.
So still, yeah, you could still kind of call it.
You could call it that, yeah.
Because like Covington's kind of a suburb of Cincinnati in a way. Even
just right across the river.
Yeah. Which, if you ever go to Covington, Kentucky, the aquarium there kicks absolute ass.
You're thinking of Newport.
Yeah, sorry, Newport. I think they're like around each other, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'm splitting hairs because Newport's the town that has the aquarium. It's by Covington.
Okay.
This is in what, Kentucky or?
Yeah, so
northern Kentucky, right on the river.
You literally cross the bridge from Cincinnati and you're there. Like I think you can be standing at the aquarium and look across the river and see the Reds Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did, I've done it before and it's really awesome. You can do a riverboat ride and they just go up and down the river and you can actually, when you're coming back, watch the Reds game from the river.
They used to have decent food on those, but I haven't been on one in so long. I have no idea.
The food was pretty decent. We did the dinner thing and it was pretty good. Like they had roast beef and it wasn't dry, which is a miracle for mass produced.
What are you gonna say, Matt?
I don't know if you guys are aficionados of aquariums, but my wife and I have gone to like a few. Like I think she really enjoys it. It's always fun to go to an aquarium, and there's been some good ones. Like we went about a year and a half ago when we went to San Diego. We went to the San Diego Aquarium, and that was pretty good. But I would say like the best one I've probably ever gone to is actually the Boston Aquarium. I don't know if you guys have ever Boston. I don't know if you've ever been to Boston.
Boston Aquarium.
We need Chris, friend of the show, Christy Petrillo, to come on. Like, yeah, we go to the Boston Aquarium all the time. Like, no, the Boston one's really awesome. I don't know if it's still alive or in there, but when we went, it's in like, there's a room that you go inside. It's a huge room, but in the center there's almost like a giant tank because you don't like almost like corkscrew like walk around it and you see the different like tanks and things like that. But there's a lot of water and everything in the center where you could just look through like huge tank. But in there was, and I think he has a name, but there's like a sea turtle, and the sea turtle, I swear to God, is like as big as like one of those like Volkswagen bugs. It's giant. It's bigger than you. Like you could ride around this turtle on its back. It's like giant. And it's just like he's just like swimming around. He's like floating and swimming around, just like chilling. And it's like you would see him and like you'd walk a little further down the corkscrew and like he'd pop up again. It's like like I see him, and then that was pretty cool. Like that. We went like over a decade ago. And that's still lingering.
The Newport.
So if you ever.
The Newport one has like a walkway over like the shark tank.
Oh, okay. It's not like it's open there at the shark tank.
No, it's like a rope thing. You literally, if you fell, you would just fall on ropes. But
yeah,
I always think of Ace Ventura when I do that.
They have the glass tunnel through the tank, shark tank as well. And I was there, it was a long time, it was, probably, oh wow, now that I think back on it, it would have to have been 20 years ago, but they had a gator exhibit that was set up like that. So it was set up with kind of this it was an open air thing, but they had like the real fine netting, but you just look down and it's like if you were on the Wyatt family compound and looked outside and there were gators wandering around. Is how it was all laid out. That was a little intense. But...
So All right, let me segue into this.
Yeah.
We went. My wife, we recently did the family vacation for spring break, like early April, to Legoland in Florida, which is like
Okay.
kind of it's technically in Winter Haven, which is like an hour, 45 minutes to an hour drive away from Orlando, but it's kind of like Orlando suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter became obsessed with the fact that I guess there's like first off like that area, it's literally like you can't walk 5 feet and there's like a lake.
Yeah.
There's literally like 100 different lakes. It's like you just pass one lake, it's like you have like 20 feet and then it's like new lake and it's like, oh my god, there's too many goddamn lakes in here. But my
Well,
daughter
the
became obsessed
crocodiles have
because,
to have places to hide.
well, the alligators are in the lakes, so it's like ton. And then we ate last night, we were there, like we ate at this restaurant, and like by the time we left it was like dark, and some people were like, yeah, look at this, and they like shined like flash like lights into just like the water, like just off the like the I'll say beach, but basically from the soil into like the water, and you just see like the eye shine of a couple gators, and they're small gators. They're like probably, I don't even know if they're like dog size maybe, but they're just like there in the water. We could see the eye shine. And my daughter became like obsessed with it and had like nightmares, even though she like was fascinated by them. But that has somehow translated, and I don't know why. Maybe she wanted to look at alligators on YouTube, and we don't usually let her watch a lot of TV, but we let her watch like at the evenings. We'll let her watch like a few minutes, like 15, 20 minutes of like YouTube, and maybe like an episode of a show like Bluey or something. And she became a fan, and my wife and I like are not feeling this. She became a fan of this YouTube channel called Outdoor Boys. Have you heard of this?
No.
As for live stream on YouTube, this guy probably has like 300,000 subscribers or whatever.
Probably.
He's big, and like we probably have like 2, but
No, we have
it's
66.
Oh, okay. It's this dude who I guess we like, my wife and I researched. He's like an attorney in Virginia somewhere or something. But it's literally a channel of him going to these different locations and like hunting or fishing or something like that. And that includes like one episode we saw, he killed this gator that was literally like as big as him.
Wow.
You see him like, and he's like he doesn't even, this isn't even like some like big Jack Diesel like dude. He looks like he's maybe 6 feet, and he's kind of like has like a pudgy belly, look like a huge nerd, wears glasses. But my wife and I are kind of not feeling it because my daughter will watch this and she enjoys it. But it's eventually it's like he goes to some location and it's all about him like killing the animals and eating them. And my wife is like not feeling it. Like the first episode we watched, they're like long episodes, like 45 minutes or something. He and his like kids like catch up these like frogs, and it's like, oh, they caught frogs, how cute, whatever like that. Then you see him just like, yeah, we're gonna eat these frogs, and he's just like cutting them and skinning them and like chopping up the bodies. Yeah, and my wife is like, ah! So it's a little graphic for my 4-year-old to be watching. He somehow laughs.
I've had this. I finally settled on fishing games, but I wanted to get into fishing, and I realized I couldn't deal with the live animal aspect of it, so I just do video game fishing.
Fishing's probably easier because fish are like, to me, kind of dumb.
Yeah, but you gotta deal with the worm thing, and then you got them like flopping around and all that stuff. It was like, no, thank you, sir.
I have a former coworker who I'll shake my fist at him because he was actually an excellent coworker, super great guy. Ended up having to move to Florida because of a family thing. But he's actually on the Bassmaster Pro circuit, and he did not use live bait. He used artificial lures. So
the security guard at my old building was I think it's PBA is the bowling league.
Mm-hmm.
He was a PBA bowler, and we found videos of him on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I guess he just, that was like his day job was just being a security guard.
Well, more power to him.
Yeah. So this is I did some background research on Dan Severn because I was interested in what his wrestling career looked like, because you go and you look at Ken Shamrock and people think like, oh, WWE was like his first foray into pro wrestling. It's like, no, he'd been doing that since like 88 or 89. as
Yeah.
like, I think he was like Vinny Valentino or something like. Seen his matches. Because there's this weird, we'll do it eventually. There's like this weird like mid-Atlantic revival from like, I think it was even Jim Crockett was doing it from like the 1990 and 91 with like Bob Caudle announcing and a bunch of like those older stars there. And I just found one.
This is Bob Caudle.
I actually,
Bob Caudle is not. I'm not a fan of Bob Caudle. Never. I don't think I've ever heard him give a good performance.
and
Really.
it's going to be on the review thing because I finally found it. Because there was this promotion I remember seeing a couple episodes of in like 2000 or something. And I couldn't find it forever because it was driving me nuts because it was a bunch of like WCW Saturday Night guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it on YouTube finally, and it's like the WXO or something, and it was Ted DiBiase's like promotion for a while, and it had like Barry Darso, like the big announcement was like Dan Severn was going to wrestle there, like Al Green, Frankie Lancaster were some of the guys they had rolling around in there. So I want to do that eventually.
Was Fidel Sierra one of the stars?
No, it was like think about like a bunch of those guys that got cut towards the end of WCW that were just taking up space, and it's a bunch of those guys.
Like Jerry Flynn.
He wasn't on there. I think did he get cut in that round, or did he manage to stay on till the end?
No idea.
So this is from 1995 from wherever it was in Kentucky. It's a decentish crowd, actually. And so Chris Candido is the NWA World Champion, and then Dan Severn is challenging. This is a quick little match. I would say you would think this would be like a TV main event around this era. It's pretty energetic.
Yeah.
It's Chris Candido healing and getting some heat on Severn. You can tell Severn is pretty green here because I had looked, he had mostly done like UWFI stuff from like since like 92 until now. So I'd say he maybe had like 15 to 18 matches under his belt.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little more. But so you can tell. Go ahead. I was gonna say you can tell Severn is green, but here's the thing that I took away from the two matches we watched of him. Yes, he is green, and he's still a little green in the Regal match, but there's you've seen a lot of MMA guys wrestle in various promotions, and you can tell like when someone has a feel for wrestling and when someone doesn't. And Severn, even at this early match where you can tell he's green, like the way he moves around the ring, you can tell he has an aptitude for pro wrestling. Like he understands what to do.
That's what I was gonna say. I didn't know that background, how he only had like a few matches going into this like Candido match that we watched. But if that's the case, like he did have an aptitude for wrestling because he did move around pretty well. I thought his selling was actually pretty decent in this. Like he kind of got it. You could tell he was green, and I didn't know that he was green so much as it's just like an MMA guy who has transitioned into wrestling. So sometimes when you get something like that, there is like a little bit of a disconnect. It's almost like, I don't know how to describe it, but almost like a hesitancy sometimes when they're either like doing a spot or taking a bump or selling. It's almost like it's not as natural. It's not second nature. They're trying to work at it. It's like, oh, I need to make sure I like emote when I'm selling, and it looks kind of like
it's like
almost artificial or stiff.
I would say it's like going to So I would say like those guys you're describing, it's like going to Shakespeare in the Park and watching someone that doesn't have a great aptitude for acting try to act, and you never feel them in the role versus like going to like maybe a Broadway show with like actors that are into their role.
Yeah. What they have an affinity for, they have something. It's
kind of like kind of like watching the build up to Mania and like watching The Rock and Cody, who just like are their characters, and then watching Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns that are just characters.
Yeah. But I mean, there are people in the WWE, to use them as an example, who like, especially like the women, who it's like some of the women there are just awful, and they're not. It's not that they're just not even like trained that well. It's like a lot of them just aren't that good. So they're trying to do the moves, and maybe they have enough athletic ability or what have you to do the moves, but they don't really look that good, or it's awkward. So sometimes when you have like a star from a different sport who's translating into pro wrestling, there is that kind of hesitancy. But I didn't really get that with Severn. Like he seemed like a little stiff, which I guess you could chalk it up more to greenness versus what I was talking about, like a disconnect. Because he did seem like he moved around. He kind of understood enough of the psychology to sell where he needed to sell and make it look actually like
I think
he was
he
selling.
was
Not that he's like, oh, you hit me in the face, I'm gonna like dramatically throw myself back in an unnatural way because I know I should be selling.
Yeah.
He actually like there was a couple of times like Candido would do moves and he sold it in a believable way that wrestlers do, where it's like, you need me in the head. I'm like, and it was believable. So I thought he did. I liked his performance in this.
I think he was a tad older by this point, and he probably had some wear and tear on him from like martial arts stuff.
Yeah. First off, we were remiss to note, I wrote down in my notes that the question I asked, did someone shoot the video of this match on their phone? And by that I mean the phones that existed in 1995, which because the video quality of this match was like awful. Like this is
they had a camcorder, because there's if you watch old Spectrum shows from like
this is so for people who, I can post links to this on our Twitter, but for people like, okay, if this is a camcorder, this is like the camcorder you would use at like your family camcorder that you bought at the store for like a couple $100 or whatever it was. This is like a professional studio recorder. It's not good quality.
What indie, like this is probably what like most of the indies looked like at the time, but I don't know if this was commercially released or if this is a handheld someone had, and if maybe they were recording it for
I do wonder
Candido or Severn. But there's a guy, like if you go back and watch like 1980s Spectrum shows, you'll see him in the front row. Sometimes he's this it's hilarious. I wish I still had a picture, but it's this really fat guy, but he's recording the matches. And he has like almost like one of those old style like wind up cameras that he's holding, and it's like this big.
I'm recording this for the talkies. Yeah. Is he cranking it as he goes?
Yeah.
We're going to take this all around the country and make lots of money off of it, see? Yeah.
That's also, and I can't believe WWE hasn't paid the guy for it yet, but that's the only footage we have of Ivan Koloff beating Bruno for the title. Is that handheld, and it's a guy talking, like kind of commentating it, but that's the only footage we have of that. And they found...
I presume...
How do you let that get away from you?
I don't know. Well, the NFL won't pay some
to like. It's like you can't do this. You can't record because now, like, first off, I just went to like an indie show like a couple weeks back, 3 weeks back, and there's totally a guy with like an iPad, and he'd be like holding it up. But I'm almost certain like he took video of like some of the matches and stuff, and it's like, and they were recording it. I think it was on like IWTV maybe or something, but
yeah,
I don't know. Concerts,
there's gray areas.
Idiots like taping stuff with their phone. It drives me nuts. But they've actually found.
How do you enjoy that?
Yeah, because some of the
what I did, the few things I recorded when I was at Collision is I was holding it here. I made sure it was in picture, and then I'm watching what's going on because they're like I wanted like Mark Briscoe's entrance. And then when it's done, I just turn it off and put it away. I'm not watching the whole thing like that.
Yeah, if you're taking like a couple-minute video, like they're not going to rag that. If you're like trying to like record the entire show, like and they probably wouldn't. They maybe like a TV taping, they wouldn't necessarily care, but more like other things.
It takes me out of it to deal with my phone. My phone goes in my pocket, and I never touch it unless it's intermission. Like I just want to be in the moment of the show. Like I don't get those guys that are like, I mean, the match time guys, I mean, that's a Meltzer thing. If you watch the PWGs he's always there with his like notebook, like a nerd. But like, I just want to be like in the moment. Like I don't want to have to worry about taping or posting on social media to show I was there. Like I just want to watch the show.
Oh, well, I totally tried to live tweet the show. I couldn't really because it's like a lot. You don't want to just be on your phone.
No,
I did take pictures of like at the very beginning of the match when like both the competitors are in the ring like before a match starts. I took like a picture because it's like, okay, this is like the match that happened, like everyone was in the ring. That I think is fine. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like you don't want to just be on your phone like distracted from the moment, taking too many photos. It's I'm not trying to have moments, WrestleMania type moments.
If I live tweeted, it'd be like
shows or what have you.
It'd be like I'm at the Ring of Honor tonight. Because I did a double shot one weekend. I went to Ring of Honor in Dayton, which that was a fun show, except the guy next to me weighed like 500 pounds, and they were just like folding chairs, so I had like half his fat on me the whole show. And I wish I had a knife to stab him. But then I went to Chikara the next day, and I swear I had like a film of like body odor on me for like a week.
Ooh.
Because I went to one, I think it was the last AEW, and I'm like, the last two AEWs, or the last two things I went to, and I'm like, oh wow. No one stinks. None ever stunk at NXT either, but ROH fans could be a little stinky.
According to AEW, like some of the metrics that I guess AEW fans are more affluent, so maybe they have more money for things like deodorant and such. I don't know.
You get less of the unwashed effect in a lot of locales now for stuff that was more niche in the past. So wrestling shows, comic conventions, you get less of that too.
At least the convention centers, you can stay away from it. Well, no, I'm going to defend the comic and cosplay ones.
I'm going to as well.
Because some of those people, but those cosplay things are hot as hell, and they're just sweating like pigs.
Well, yeah, I have
been that guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't begrudge a guy if you, or like you're like Night Mage. Like I'm sure he probably, Night Mage looks like he smells nice, Shad. He probably does. But if you go to one of these like, if you go to one of these convention shows and it's like you showered and you like put deodorant or cologne on, whatever like that, and then you put on a suit that's going to be like 50 pounds in a place that's maybe questionably air conditioned with like 1,000 people, it's like, yeah, okay, you're going to probably sweat in that. So I'm not going to necessarily hold you. You have a little, you smell a little ripe at the end of the day, but I mean, we're talking about people who walk into these shows at at night, and it's like you haven't showered, guy.
There's a certain sourness that someone that hasn't showered for a while gets, because honestly, like even if you're just walking around without cosplay and you've been there for like 10 hours, like you're just sweaty. Like you're
gonna catch,
That's the thing I've never learned to manage, and I always forget between conventions, is just like, and I don't know what it is, but like the insta dehydration you get at a convention, like I've never managed well.
You just gotta take water with you. Most of them now have the fountains that have the water bottle refill in it.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you go by it, top it off, and just because as much moving as you're doing, you're not sweating a lot. But you're probably sweating continuously just from the ambient body. The ambient temperature is up for more people being in there. So you're not sweating a lot, but it's happening continuously. And so you're slowly bleeding off your hydration levels as you go.
I remember, so they don't sell them there anymore, but like when you used to go to Colossal Con, which is like, it's up in Sandusky, Ohio. But that one is like just mostly a cosplayer convention, is just like a massive drunken party.
Is that the one at the water park?
Yeah. And they would sell,
you've mentioned this before.
They would sell like 48-ounce booze drinks, like mixed drinks. For like, I think it was like for $20, and there'd just be these people walking around, just these huge drinks. And they'd all have like anime names, but like, I remember they were good too, but I never bought the big one, because I'm like, no, I will just be on the floor getting stepped on.
I hope they were smart enough to make those like not as strong.
Well, the other one I went to, it's there a bit, but like if you were to talk about con debauchery, that one. Because, like, usually, like, Sunday people are tired, but at that one, Sunday rolls around, and people are just laying on the floor, like, half dead after 3 days. Like,
kind of like Dragon Con.
Yeah, so, like, when you talk about con debauchery, that one's probably up there.
I would figure that those big 48 ounces probably have a lot of ice in them.
They were usually like
Yeah.
the crushed up, like they were like kind of like the icy drink anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
to drag us back over,
Yeah.
this match between Candido and Severn. First of all, it surprises me that it both does and does not surprise me that the NWA at this point put their title on someone as fresh to it as Severn was.
Well, I
But
think
the
this
match-
was after the Shane Douglas thing, and I think this is like just Dennis Corluzzo trying to hold on to whatever shreds of it he can.
So this match it's not complicated, but it's still good. Because the very beginning of it. Yeah, the very beginning of it, you establish Severn as a threat, and then Candido takes over and beats up on him for a while. I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add one thing. It was a question before we talk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was that Mark Curtis as the referee?
Yes, it was. That's the first thing I noticed.
Yes.
You know how I know?
I was like, oh my god, I think that's Mark Curtis.
You know how I know? Because
this full mullet glory.
well, no, in the suspenders.
Oh, he had
it was
glowing,
and
the flowing hair.
And the suspenders gave him away like on top of the hair. Because I'm like, oh, that's Mark Curtis. I was so happy.
Yeah, I was too. Party in the back all day long.
Well, then I was like, and then I was like, oh, it's in Kentucky, of course. Like they have Mark Curtis.
Now wait a minute. That's it. Mark Curtis is from Tennessee.
Now,
but it was, yeah, I was so happy to see Mark Curtis again.
Now, my only real complaint about the match, because I thought it was an easy watch, I would recommend people check that one out. My only complaint is I thought the ending was kind of sudden and out of nowhere, because the ending is kind of Candido goes for a pile driver, Severn powers out of it and knocks him on his back and pretty much locks on the armbar, and that's it.
Yeah,
which
that was my takeaway. Was the very beginning of the match, Severn picks the leg twice, and Candido scrambles for the ropes. He's like, "No, you can't do this to me." And when Candido takes over, he's doing heel stuff, and that. My takeaway from the end was that it was to establish how scary it was when Severn snatched you.
Yeah.
And if he's that raw to professional wrestling, I should say, if he is that raw to it, then yeah, I get it. But doing it this way, kind of, at least to me, is making Severn's bona fides as how dangerous he is, because we're putting over his armbar as a killer. So he just does one back body drop, has the opportunity to grab it, and just there you go.
I think I was gonna say I took away from this in the other match. I'm like, wow, Dan Severn picked the absolute worst era to try pro wrestling in, because I think if he had done it in the 80s, he would have been really big. And I actually think if he would have done it in the 10s and now, he would be really big. Because I think his style would be more appreciated now, and you don't kind of need the big charisma that he lacked at the time. And I would say he doesn't how do I want to say this? He has charisma. He just doesn't have big charisma. What I think he would have been
in his physicality, I guess.
Where I think
that he could.
Where I think he would have been really good is having Jim Cornette as his manager and being his bodyguard or his.
Sorry. Well, I guess I would say for this match, there was kind of a lot of stalling by Chris Candido, but it did play into that he wasn't going to out wrestle Severn. They really did kind of get the message over, in my opinion, that Severn was this world class wrestler, and that if he got a hold of you, he was going to twist you into knots, or maybe grab an ankle, grab the armbar, something that would actually make you possibly tap out, or at least damage you, that you couldn't effectively continue or have an effective actual contest with him, because he was dangerous in that aspect. So there was a lot of stalling by Candido. There was a lot of he grabbed his leg, and it's he's squirming over to the ropes, grabbing the ropes to get a rope break. And I didn't appreciate that because it was kind of like old school.
I thought it was
But
just
it
effective
also-
healing, personally.
Yeah.
Like he was
It
stalling.
was. Yeah, he was stealing. And then I like the fact when Candido took over, it's like it became more almost like a back and forth. It wasn't just like one-sided. It wasn't a squash match at all. It was, Candido actually showing that he actually could hang for a bit until, of course, like the end. The ending was a little bit abrupt, but I did like it. I thought Severn's selling was good. I did think that he kind of maybe was green, but he didn't take to wrestling, it seemed to me.
He did, because
I like that message that he could.
I think his like MMA / like martial arts skills really came over. I was gonna say too, the other thing that struck me is anytime I go a while and I don't see Chris Candido, I'm always taken with him immediately because he's just such like a total package guy.
He was a guy that in like the modern era, it wouldn't have really been a big thing, but back in the day, I feel like his size probably like hindered him.
He's not that
'Cause
small though. Like he did not look out of place against Severn.
The problem,
He's
which I get a lot
wrestling
of guys-
small, but like today he'd be mid-sized today. He wouldn't even be small today.
that's the problem is like he was still in that era where guys were like 6'4", 250 and up. When he was, I'm gonna look up how tall he was. He
He's
probably was like
5'11", 6
under-
foot, like 220 to 230. So I'm gonna guess.
Let me see if they say his build height 5'8". That's kind of small.
Yeah.
Build weight 225. Like he actually had, and he was like well muscled, so he like that size wouldn't necessarily, but I think the 5'8", that's his build height. Like I'm gonna assume he probably was that because I don't think he was like Rey Mysterio.
No, he's
size.
not even
Yeah,
Leo
but
Rush.
he did.
I don't even think he's Leo
He
Rush.
did-
Like short.
He did seem a lot shorter than other people, which again, like in that era, you're dealing with guys who, like if you were up, in the WWE, WWF at the time, like they would even probably pushed you unless you were like 6'2" and up. So
Yeah.
but
My takeaway, just to tag this from earlier, that Severn's charisma is not quote unquote charisma, it's menace. He has an aura of menace when he hits the ring. And Candido just has the thing that always watching Candido again that always gets me is that Candido just has so much personality in what he does. Even when he's doing like basic heel stuff, he's just brimming with personality to watch him. Nothing he does has what's the word I'm looking for here? Has a downbeat or has a bland spot. Everything has flair or personality to it. Even when he's standing there like putting stomps on Severn, it's like no, there's that's not boring the way he's doing it. So
Yeah. So we want to go on to our next match.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from the NWA 50th anniversary show. Fun fact: Kurt Angle was in a battle royal on this show. So this is Dan Severn defending the NWA World Title against Lord Steven Regal, and so there's a bit of a backstory. I sent the guys a bit of a shoot interview, which was interesting because it was some guy in like Violent J interviewing Dan Severn.
It's weird to have that as a shoot interview setup, but
and so my takeaway was Dan Severn, and I've seen him in other interviews, but man, Dan Severn is just such a normal guy.
I think
I didn't have a chance to watch that. I didn't have a chance to watch that, but I kind of like on my own researched this match a little bit because there was a couple things that were like odd. I felt were odd watching it.
Oh, there definitely were towards the end, especially.
But one of the things that I thought was like it was really subtle, and I mean, you almost have to have watched a lot of wrestling like we have to really kind of be like notice like weird little details like this. But I'm like, is that? And then I like looked really closely. There's a couple points I like even like rewound like footage and like looked at it closely again. I'm pretty sure that Regal's boots were on backwards.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I
Pretty
noticed
sure.
he almost.
I'm pretty sure. I
They're
could
on
be
the wrong
wrong,
feet.
but
Oh.
yeah, they're on the wrong feet. And I looked up after that, and it's like this was what Regal describes as like he was at the lowest point in his life. He was just absolutely
Yeah.
wrecked with substance abuse at this period.
Because he when he climbs through in the ring, he almost can't like stand up straight again, and he almost just like takes a header right there.
Yeah.
Because
So was he under the influence at this match? Or
yeah,
was he just
because
like,
Severn said they couldn't find him like all weekend, and then they had to play his like the reason there's that long pause is they didn't actually know if he was going to come out, so they played his music for like a long time, and then Severn said he's just drunk as a skunk when he comes out, and he said he was surprised because when they locked up it was okay-ish, which I'll say he does okay, but there's some issues with it, especially the way they call the match, because the crowd is kind of aggravating, and that woman that told that guy to shut the fuck up halfway through was my MVP of the night.
Yes, I wanted to give her a hug.
But I will say, where they did screw up, like I didn't think it was terrible for the first half, but the second half, like when the crowd starts clapping just because you guys stand up, like you need to do something different.
since you brought it up, first off, it's a small comment, but I want to say like there were people in this crowd I wanted to hit you with a brick. Like you were so fucking annoying. And I feel sometimes people overblow it, but I have been in crowds. And I have sometimes seen crowds, but it's like I don't know how I can say this other than the fact that the crowd or individuals in the crowd, you are not part of the show. You don't need to be part of the show. I didn't pay I'm not watching this on my television screen for you. I didn't pay a ticket for you. I don't want to hear you give commentary. I don't want to hear your smart little smarky comments thinking that you're oh so funny. You're someone whose parents potentially didn't they maybe coddled you too much and thought that everything you did was amazing, because someone should have sat you down and told you you don't need to express every thought that comes into your head and voice it out for everyone. These are the same sort of people that have very loud phones in public areas.
I will say
this crowd ruined.
I don't want to hear your jokes about Regal. Yeah, I don't want to hear you being boring. I don't need it.
I will say, I went to a Ring of Honor show once, and there was this guy two seats over from me, and he's got his hoodie up over his head. He's this black guy, and he's just doing commentary during the Briscoes and War Machine, and he's like, "Oh yeah, big boy, you just beat that hillbilly up," and he just gave commentary like that the whole time, and it was hilarious. But he was just he wasn't it was super into it commentary. It's just it's just I can't remember some of the lines, but it was hilarious. But
it's different for being I'm doing commentary because I'm into it and stuff. This guy, we're at the beginning of the match and they lock up and they go in some match stuff. We're 2 minutes in and boring. It's okay, dude, shut the hell. You know what? Kick him out. This is a 1997 Attitude Era Mark who thinks everything has to be a Steve Austin match with lots of punch. Get him out. You're in an NWA show in 97. What the hell do you expect? And when that woman yells at him, I'm just yes, please. Can you go slap him too? The guy never shuts up. Those are the worst people.
He kind of gave up he kind of gave up at the end.
I have had shows with people in my last run, one of the shows there were these three guys who were high school seniors who thought they were super clever by bringing one of those little battery-operated kids' megaphones with them. And if they had gotten within arm's reach of me, I was going to take it and smash it. But they didn't get that close to me. And I got to the back, and one of the guys, I was like, "Who the hell are those guys?" And one of the guys on the roster goes, "Those are my cousins." I was like, "Dude, I'm going to kill them." And he's like, "Are they that bad?" I said, "They never shut the fuck up the entire night. They ran their mouth with that stupid ass megaphone that he's like, I told them not to bring that." I said, if they get close enough, I'm gonna break it. Just so you know, in the future, and those guys hated my guts from that point forward. Not in a you're a heel thing, but in I'd make my entrance and they'd get up and flip me off and walk out of the room until the other person's entrance music came on. It's just like, you little bitches. You get called out for being shits on a show that nobody came to see you at, and then you're going to be butthurt about it? Kiss my white ass.
Now,
Sorry,
I will say,
this is why I hate the what chant. Like, this is the same thing.
I will say this match devolves into crap by the last 10 minutes. Because I thought they were being really unfair, but like, you can feel like everyone in the crowd growing frustrated after about like the 18-minute mark, and they realize this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know if this match at the time got hype, or people thought it was good. I
would have been. I was interested in it, but like where you could tell they lost the crowd is like they get on their feet, you hear yay, and then they go back down like aw, and then they get back up like yay, aw. And it's like,
it was
you guys really
a lot. It was a lot of mat work, which
a lot of
between
arm work.
like guys like Regal and Severn, I would have been going into this. I'm like, oh, like this could be like exciting or interesting. Like you could see like a good technical, but it almost just amounted to like
they're just playing with themselves essentially.
Yeah,
you know what pissed me off?
If Regal was not in a state necessarily to do a lot, then I guess that's what they had to do. But it did not make for like an exciting match. Like,
no.
Hang on, Matt. Let me see if I can do this properly.
Mhm.
Mr. Severn, I've been drinking.
I think
Mr. Severn, I'm fucked. I can't do it. Can't take a flat back bump.
I will say this is one of the
Mr.
first times
I'm gonna do it again.
I did say
Can't do it.
I did
go to Matt.
Smoking crack. I was smoking crack all weekend.
We go to the mat.
I was smoking crack all afternoon with Anvil. I'm gonna do it again. Fucked.
I will say this ending did get this ending got the rare like fuck this match from me at the end, because it straight up pissed me off, because the ending, so he gets the armbar and I'm like, motherfucker, you couldn't have picked his arm like 10 minutes ago and saved me this?
Except he tried to. He tried to pick that arm a few times, and Regal S-gripped every time, and he could not get it broken.
It was odd though, because he did the armbar when Regal was like 2 inches from the rope, and it's like Regal could have literally like moved his foot like 2 inches and like hit the rope and a rope break. But I guess obviously they were just like calling it. But after like 20 something minutes of this, but it wasn't a particularly good match.
No.
Like and
there's a certain train
background.
wreck. There's a certain train wreck aspect to it. Because the thing is, you can tell, even during the mat work, you can tell Regal is just fucked, like completely.
He's going through the motions. He has enough. There's enough there that he can do. He didn't make embarrassment out of himself, I would say.
There was a couple points
really do, like a complicated match.
There was a point where they were standing and Severn had him in a hold, and he did that kind of drop down like he was going to do something, then he forgot and just stopped. And I'm like, oh, that looked bad.
Yeah.
I did not know the story going into this, but in watching it, I'm just like, well, I'll be honest. I was pissed off from the beginning because the crowd ruined whatever it could have been from that perspective. And then I was like, I gotta get through this because we're gonna talk about it, but I really don't want to at this point. That's how mad I was with that shitty fan.
I let the dogs out and I was watching it on my phone. I'm just like, oh my god, like this match. It's really bad when it's like, oh, there's some time that's gone by. Like I've got to be getting close to the end. Oh, 90 seconds has gone by. Damn it.
Yeah.
That Chris Rock thing. I'm not gonna look. Scrape, 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 and shrimp.
And then,
scrape. 2 minutes.
And then it's like, what if I just go ahead 15 seconds? Okay, they're in the same hold. Let's just go ahead 10 seconds more. Oh, still in the same hold. Like, so I kind of cut maybe a couple minutes off because they just weren't doing anything. But man, it's not the worst match we've watched on this show, but I think it pissed me off more than anything else because like,
it's nowhere near the worst match that we've ever reviewed on this podcast, but it wasn't good, and it was it was very disappointing, I guess, considering like the two guys, like Severn, who obviously has a mixed martial arts and as a world-class wrestler type of background, and then William Regal, who we know is a great technical wrestler. You would have thought they would have put on a lot more than what we got. But
And I think
guys, go ahead. Finish
I was
your
gonna
thought.
say, and I was gonna say, you can really tell Regal's in bad shape because when we go to the next match, you can just tell he's in a better. I mean, he's lost.
Yeah.
He's lost a good 40 pounds probably, and you can just tell looking at him that he's in like a better stage of his career.
A lot healthier.
The thing that always threw me about Dan Severn, and I think was the biggest career limiter for him, is you look at Dan Severn in this point, you know, when he was kind of more prime Dan Severn and stuff. And he looks like a tank. He looks like a killer. He looks like a beast. And then he opens his mouth to talk, and it's kind of nasally, and he's got a super mild, chill voice, and it's like, no wonder you never picked up a microphone, man, because
you know what
your voice does not match you at all.
What you needed for like the perfect wrestler is you need to take his wrestling talent and implant it into Don Fry. Because Don Fry was like that, you know, had that, you know, big Texas like shit kicker, like, because there's a podcast called MMA Junkie, and they used to every Friday they used to have Don Fry on it with a call-in segment, and people would ask him for advice. And it was hilarious because
I want it to be random advice, like, Don, I'm thinking about planting some vegetables in my garden. Like, what do you think would get me the best yield? And he's like, well, you know, I think you should plant some sweet peppers this month.
No, who was that?
You
Punch your man in there.
Like,
you gotta, once you're in the dirt, you gotta punch them down in there so it's good.
Who was that?
Look, you gotta put a base of pine nuggets first, and then your soil.
Who was it that did the call-in show? It was like the Baltimore Orioles, and someone asked about tomato plants. He's like, I think that lady should worry about where her next lay's coming from instead of her tomato plants. It was a baseball manager.
Wow.
And he was like, fuck this radio station.
Cut.
It's like from the 80s. Who was it?
I have no idea.
But it's hilarious.
I've never heard this.
Oh, it's hilarious because like a call-in show. And
It's
like,
amazing.
Yeah, he's like, fuck this station, like, fuck this show, and good night is like the end of it.
Wow.
I'll get a clip of it afterwards, but it is hilarious. Right. It's right up there with it's not the same guy, but the Cubs manager that was bitching that the fans don't have jobs because they come to the day games and heckle the team. That one's a good one too. Baseball has some amazing rants.
I have I can't just sit and watch baseball. Not anymore. I did when I was a kid, but I just can't do it anymore, man. It doesn't hook me. I will admit though that I get way more joy out of watching John Boy breakdowns of baseball events and stuff than I probably should. And then also hearing John Boy just bag on Angel Hernandez is also a lot of fun.
Angel.
So.
Fun fact about Angel Hernandez. So Angel Hernandez sued the MLB and claimed racial discrimination because they weren't giving him the good games. And the MLB successfully defended the lawsuit because they proved he was incompetent at his job.
It is fact in a United States court of law that Angel Hernandez sucks at his job. Yeah. But that makes me so happy.
The other thing to wiki before we get to last match, if you want a round of hilarity, is read the 10-cent beer night riot in Cleveland.
Oh yeah.
Because there was someone that went, like a well-known like news anchor or writer, and they asked him about it, and he was like, "Well, I went with $2 in my pocket. You do the math." But like they stole like a Texas player's hat at some point, and Billy Martin and all of like the Rangers players like grabbed their bats and they're like, "Let's go get it," because noted trademark with also the copyright drunken degenerate Billy Martin was involved.
So just the first line on Wikipedia says where it was, the Indians versus the Rangers, June 4th, 1974, meant to improve attendance by offering cups of low-alcohol beer for 10 cents, equivalent to 2023 of 62 cents a beer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And, or a substantial discount on the regular price in 2023 money would have been $4.02. So, as opposed to 62 cents in 2023 money. And with a limit of 6 beers per purchase, but no limit on the number made during the game. Gee, I wonder.
Well, you couldn't have tracked that and like.
No.
But yeah,
God,
it's
that sounds like something that you would see it in a movie and go, man, no, that's not believable.
Oh, I love riots. Yeah.
Brad, that would be Earl Weaver.
Yes, Earl Weaver. Yes, the Earl.
And in our group chat, I just posted the infamous radio blooper. It's only like 2 minutes long, but
oh, it's great.
Classic. Manager's Corner was where it was.
Yes.
From,
oh, yes. Shad, you have to listen
and
to it.
Earl Weaver was absolutely known.
Just
for
a cantankerous old fuck.
Fights with umpires. Sorry. And it was just like, he was great. Like, I love those personalities.
It's how much fun I got watching Joey Votto rip into people on ESPN and stuff. It's like, oh, you mean you guys on the coast who don't think that people in the Midwestern markets mean anything? We got this many people, and just because we don't happen to live on the coast, we're not worth it? You jacket? Like, I watched him rip into them for a minute solid and laughed and clapped the entire time. So I'll probably enjoy this.
My other favorite all time is like Dennis Green. The Bears are who we thought they are. Like, if you want to crown their asses, like that's a great, because I think he kicks like the podium during that one.
Mm.
So then, so our
hold on, before we move to that final match, the joke I was gonna make is that we should for the recording of this show, we should basically take this audio. We should throw a picture of a crying Tony Khan up as a background on when we post the audio on YouTube, and then put a caption being like "sad Tony Khan," and then talk about how this past match, Regal versus Severn, was better than Danielson versus Ospreay. Even though it's complete bullshit, like that's what the algorithm rewards, right?
Oh yeah. Rage clicks.
Khan.
Yeah.
Is Eric Bischoff still like raging and salting because Dax like called him a stalker?
It's because Dax got a good shot on him.
I kind of agree with Dax though. Like, it is kind of stalkery. Like, why are you?
Yeah.
I think Bischoff did have like a meltdown, which even culminated him calling like FTR like mid. And it's like, look, whatever you're feeling about FTR, it's like they're not mid.
They're not mid. No.
That is not exactly what they are. But it's almost like it's like the old like drill tweet. It's like, I'm not mad. Please don't write in the papers that I'm mad. It's like you're way mad. You have been officially gotten to that you're going to talk about this all day long.
Yeah, you're super butthurt. Yeah, Bischoff flipped out on it, which, to be honest with you, is pretty funny and only made the point even more.
Which the thing that gets me though is when people get real pro-clutchy about Tony Khan's tweets. Like, I mean, it's the old school internet user in me, but like, man, the stuff people get really upset about is like, that's message board Tony. You guys are getting really upset about. Like, that is such a message board. Like, that's such like a 2003 like message board tweet.
Yeah.
It's really funny, like with like new internet, seeing like old internet attitude, like, or like tactics pop up and like the normies just totally bite on it and can't handle it. Cause you know what's funny is we were watching Unsolved Mysteries. And the guy had like committed suicide or something, and this is like the mid 2000s. They were talking about like they thought he was like gay or something, and they were like brought up his like chat room stuff, and he was pretending to be a woman. And it was like, they're like, well, look at this ominous thing, and he was like big titty blonde, like 200 or something. And you know, as someone, you know, and it was like, is the old like, as the old like internet user me, it's like, no, he's just being a dumb fuck in a chat room. Ominous to that. That's just like what people did for the lulz in the AOL day.
Trolling.
ASL.
ASL.
Yeah.
18F California, you.
Yeah. So then this final match is
Audio doesn't married. I was trying to play the Unsolved Mysteries theme.
Oh
yeah.
God. I'm glad you didn't. I didn't need a shiver.
The scariest damn theme.
Yeah, I didn't need that shiver to run up my spine tonight.
The new one is not good. The new one likes to take obvious suicides and tries to muddy the waters.
Oh, so it takes the iHeartRadio podcast approach.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, no, they don't take 6-hour-long episodes to talk about something that could be told in 20 minutes. They don't do that.
God, I hear those on the radio in the morning, and it just pisses me off because I'm like, okay, look, I know that like we're not big, but this shit that you're pushing is so basic that I don't understand. Like, are you advertising this because you're like, well, no one's going to listen to this unless we advertise for it? Is that what the rationale?
Well, it's
like, advertise us for God's sake. We'll be way more quality than that is.
I think like that stuff and like Wondery and all that is why the podcast market's starting to die.
Oh, everybody's wanting to hop on it, so they're cranking low quality stuff out.
Low effort shit. And like true crime, I used to like true crime, but I've really gotten tired of that because like a lot of it is now taking obvious misadventures in the wild and suicides and trying to like hype them up as something more. But the other reason I really hate it is there is like this strong undercurrent in true crime of like, oh wow, they're like exercising their rights to defend themselves from the police, and that's sus. Because like I'm just gonna be honest, and I've told people this, like, if I'm innocent of a crime and the cops want to search my property, yes, I'd be more than happy. Do you have a warrant? Or yes, I will answer your questions. Let me get my attorney first. And no, I will not take a lie detector test.
Yeah.
Like those are the things every person should do, and I'm tired of true crime podcasts being like, well, they got an attorney or they didn't want to take a lie detector. That's like suspicious. Like, no,
that's
smart.
not. Yeah. The only true crime I listen to anymore is LPOTL, and it's because it's a comedy podcast that talks about true crime. It's not a true crime podcast. So, they also don't make bones when they're like, nope, this is just a weird thing that happened that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and it just bothers me because it's like, well, no, like I don't necessarily distrust the police, but they're under a lot of pressure to possibly solve that case, and you can say some dumb shit that can get you in trouble without meaning to. That's what an attorney is for.
I'm not going to say it's that I don't trust the police. There's at least one that I don't trust, and I don't know which one it is that's going to work whatever case I'm attached to. So, no, I'm going to protect myself in all the legal ways that I have for it. Anyway, last match, Regal versus American Dragon.
Yeah, and this is from MCW, which, funnily enough, we've never acknowledged it before, and we've done 2 matches from it in 2 weeks. So this is very early Bryan Danielson. He still has like his American Dragon tights on. So if you don't know, Bryan Danielson as American Dragon started out with a mask. And so this is kind of a standard like TV match of Danielson gets like his hope spots, and Regal kind of bullies him.
Just to back up for a second, is the American Dragon thing where the Chikara took off with like Retail Dragon and Dragon
I think they were there. I think that was also a takeoff because then you had Super Dragon, who was around at the time Chikara started. Okay. So I think
the first time I saw, and I remember it was on the internet back in the early aughts. I saw I couldn't find the video at the time, but it was the image in the write-up of Retail Dragon wearing the blue Walmart vest. I laughed myself sick. That just absolutely killed me.
I mean, it's a shame Dragon died horribly.
But he's a huge dragon.
Well, do you know who was under the mask for? Do you know?
for part of it anyway.
Well, Eddie Kingston was that. Do you know? Now, here's a fun one. Do you know who CP Monk is or was?
Was it? No.
Necro Butcher.
Yeah.
I almost said someone else, but then I was like, no, he was getting made fun of in the same thing. So
I don't remember
Isn't
who was Darkness Crabtree.
no idea.
That's a good question.
Because I know
I'm gonna look that up, but while I do, isn't the actual like true story that even though it was obvious like a joke in a rib, didn't Punk actually get like
oh, he got mad,
pissed
but he
off
got
at
mad.
CP Monk?
He got mad butthurt about it because he has no sense of humor.
Didn't Cabana think the Colt
Special
Cabana
mod,
thing was
fragile
funny?
body, fragile
No
ego.
way, like Colt years.
Oh, I guess Darkness was Mike Quackenbush.
Oh, okay.
Huh.
No,
Okay.
no. Colt worked an angle years later where he had to save Colt Cabunny from Archibald Peck. So he did an angle for it. I mean, because Colt has a sense of humor though, and he's not going to turn down money. But like, Punk's just a humorless asshole.
Yeah.
About stuff
Yeah.
like that. But so this is interesting because it's kind of like the first match. I wouldn't put this on a compilation or say this is amazing or anything, but it would be like a energetic like TV main event of that era.
Maybe not how good he is, but you can see in watching this how good Danielson will be in watching. Like you can tell,
There's
like,
something
oh,
there.
he's on the upswing.
There's something there. Like it's like the first time I ever saw Johnny Gargano on like a local indie TV, and I was like, oh, that guy has something. Like there's just times you can tell.
Sure. So it's this match is fun. It's good. Regal's a dick. Danielson's scrappy.
Nice missile drop kick.
Yeah, really. Yeah, this is before he started using the cattle mutilation, which I don't know who came up with whatever.
It's interesting. It's interesting, even if you go a year into the future with ROH, how much Danielson's style changed in that year, because he's very he's good here. Like, I'm not going to say anything else. He's good, but he's a very generic wrestler in this era. And like when you get to ROH, he's got much more of an identity. I think because he's out of the WWE system and like trying to like do it on his own. Like, so he's kind of got to be more than a TV worker.
There's a certain point in your training where you go from whatever term you want to use, meat and potatoes, rice and beans, like standard basic stuff that is plug and play about anywhere, to start putting your own personality into it. And whenever, well, for some people, whenever it flows, like it comes quick. But like we said, even in this, you can see how good Danielson will be. And he does a great job with this. Like, for working a pretty basic style, he's doing a great job. And it's really enjoyable.
And he, I think what's impressive is he really holds his own. He holds his own, not just as in the work department, but like, and I would, in that earlier era, I would never have said I thought Bryan Danielson was the most charismatic of guys. I thought that came later, but he, just from like a charisma and presentation standpoint, like he feels like he belongs there with Regal. Like he feels like a big league wrestler.
Yeah.
Because sometimes like you go to an indie show and they bring in like, I don't know, someone with kind of a name, and then they pair him up with like a local guy, and then you're kind of like, oh, this local guy has no business being in the same ring with like a guy that's wrestled in the big leagues. Like that wasn't happening here. Like he looked like he belonged.
Yeah, it's yeah, absolutely. And that makes this whole thing even more fun to watch. The dynamic works, the skill is there, the capability is there. Like this whole thing is just fun.
And it's interesting that he's excelling at just kind of a more generic style at the time. Like I said, it's interesting because Danielson there's not like a lot of he doesn't do much move set wise that would make you think of him in his current like iteration.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Because the match still really works.
No, that's actually a compliment that he can, like, he's still this good and he has, like, very little resemblance to the guy he becomes. But I thought
And,
this was, MCW's interesting. Like, I've seen a couple matches from it now, and it's an interesting little one. Did they say Regal had held the Southern Heavyweight title there?
I think they did.
Because they were calling him the commissioner, and I was thinking, like, oh, he wasn't the commissioner in WWE at the time. I mean, it just must be the MCW guy.
Well, I mean, they said that he was the commissioner at the time.
They said more than once he was the commissioner.
Yeah.
Of
No, but
WWE
okay. I was trying to remember if they had differentiated that or if he was the MCW commissioner.
No, he was.
Oh.
No.
And Regal's pre-match promo was something of it. I'm sure you're very good, but you're not going to be on TV. You might as well just lie down.
Yeah,
or something
you're right.
like
You're
that.
right.
So,
the commentary I thought was pretty decent for this too. I don't know who it was, but they were competent.
They did fine.
You know what always upsets me, and it made me remember this, is when Regal won the IC title and then won the King of the Ring, and they ended that Raw with him like scowling as he sat on the throne. And like it was so cool, and then he immediately got popped for a wellness violation, and it all ended. And I was like, man, I really want to see what that push would have looked like.
That I've talked about this on the show before. Like that to me, like he looked so amazing in that because he just like was sitting there, and Regal has always been a guy whose like facial expressions have been like so on point, and he just like he had. The ending of that was just him sitting on the throne. He had this like menacing, like sinister gaze on, and he looked just like king size. He looked like wow. And I was excited. I'm like, wow, this is something like he could be something like really awesome. And the rumor at the time, which it could have been nothing, but I think, and I probably heard it from like Dave Meltzer or something. But the rumor that had been put out there was that he was in line for like actual big push, like maybe a main event push, not necessarily like the world title, but that was the beginning of like the weird era where by then they had done like the brand split maybe. So if not, then they were kind of that weird area. It's like, yeah, random guys.
Oh, they were like
title,
4 or 5
like,
years into the brand split at that point.
Okay, yeah. So like it wasn't like outside the realm of possibility that Regal could have actually won the title, even like transitionally for like a couple months, and then they put on like Batista or somebody. But he was allegedly set for like a main event push, and then he got popped for wellness violation, and that was it. Like they never did really anything more with him. That was basically the end of it. Did he ever really wrestle on the main roster after that wellness violation pop? Like I know he did some stuff in NXT because we did that match he did with Chris. Could have, but. Yeah, he could have, but I don't know if he really
think he
much.
did.
Yeah,
I think that might have been it for him on the main roster.
Yeah,
maybe like a match here and there, like a little mini run, but I think that was it for him as like a full-time guy.
Which just kills me. Other people had wellness violations and came back just fine. I don't know why that just hit the brakes right there.
I mean, it could have been his decision. He could have just said, hey, look, a full-time schedule, I can't handle that and stay clean.
Maybe not.
Or maybe he just decided, like, I'm good. Well, I mean,
regardless, it's still heartbreaking.
I could understand, though. I mean, like you said, though, there's a bit of a double standard, but I think I would be mad at a guy that, like, I just got, like, step one of their big push started and they immediately like fail it.
But the wellness violation stuff at the time was not super well defined, so it might have well been like, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
I think I'm
just spouting off. But
I think that was post Benoit murders though, so I think they were being super hardcore on like popping people.
So and this goes back to the other accusations that come out about Vince is you want everybody to be big and strong and muscly, but you can't be using PEDs or steroids or anything. But you need it. It's like if you have if you work in the trucking industry and they say, well, the DOT regulations say that you have to stop and rest for this amount of time, but you have to get this load to this place by this time. And you go, well, that's not physically. And they said, you got to get it there by this time. Not my problem. And so, you get conflicting information. It's like, well, you shouldn't be doing that, but you need to like put on some mass to do this. You need to do it pretty quick. And it's like, well, it's either setting you up to fail or they're going to turn a blind eye to everything.
They seem to, at least in WWE, have a happy medium right now, because I don't feel like that many people get popped currently.
I would guess that they're probably focusing on hard drug stuff, but that's just a guess.
Yeah, they seem to be okay on that, and I think they seem to have a pretty good concussion protocol for the most part. Like, I don't think they've had a real big oopsie with that in a while. I mean, they're certainly doing better than the NFL as far as not letting concussed people wrestle.
I don't think the NFL's taking it seriously at all, despite what they say.
They kind of are.
Man, you're gonna have quite an uphill battle to convince me of that, because
the new helmets help a lot. Because that was a problem for a while, is they had safer helmets, but the players said they were uncomfortable, and the league finally said, "Screw it, guys! You have to wear the safer helmets." Like they're
actually
taking it more seriously than they were, but I would say they're not taking it seriously enough. I actually think wrestling and UFC have done better than most as far as like taking it seriously.
What are you going to say, Matt?
There have been, I was going to say, like, specifically with the NFL, and this is like years ago, but I actually read a study, which I don't know if like that data has actually been updated or if it actually panned out to anything, but I was reading a study that was being performed with that, like, mouth guards even actually make an importance, that people like having a mouth guard in addition to the things like the new helmets, which have better protection. But just having like a mouth guard in place, the study was purporting that people who had mouth guards in place when they basically suffered a blow that would have otherwise caused a concussion, it decreased the chances, which it's like, in some respects you could be like, well, how does that make a difference? But it was something where it's like almost like the shock of everything gets like transferred through it. I mean, I guess in a certain sense it makes sense if you have a barrier between two pieces of your teeth, which is part of your skull, or it's attached to your skull. Like, the shock of everything gets kind of like spread out.
If it goes into that bite, you've had a fall or something happen where you whip your head and you crack your teeth, and you're just like, oh god, that feels so bad. And therefore, I don't want to use, it's the only word I can think of, but the shock wave that could hit your brain out of something like that getting stopped because it hits that mouth guard, and that mouth guard compresses and basically absorbs all of that. Yeah. It makes sense. I guess I would be shocked that it would be that big a deal, but it does make sense to me.
Yeah, that's an old study. It was just like a piece of anecdotal information, but I do think do make a difference. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you probably can't completely remove, unless you don't do it. Essentially, you don't step on the field. Like, there's no chance you can completely reduce the risk of actually, because you have guys that are 250, 300 pounds, like, crashing into each other. Like, yeah.
And some people are just prone to it. Like,
some people are prone to it. It's actually in certain ways, it's actually shocking that more injuries don't abound, because you're talking about, like, the amount of force that is being generated by some people crashing into each other is like tremendous. Like you don't even have an idea.
Well, I had read
But
it's not like those big hits, like it's smaller hits that usually cause like the concussions.
mhm.
'Cause sometimes
If it's
Look, even beyond concussions, like there are guys who get completely like torn ACLs and other horrific joint injuries for just stepping the wrong way. Um,
well,
I mentioned earlier that my wife and I went to like a local wrestling show. It was actually Virginia Championship Wrestling, which is usually based out of Norfolk, which is kind of way further away. It's like 3-4 hour drive from where we live, like just outside of Washington, D.C. But they've done a couple shows now in Alexandria, which is pretty close to us. Just literally like across the border from DC, like across the river, as they say. And we went a couple times. In this last show we went to, there was a guy who he's like in his early mid 40s, like, but he's been working with Virginia Championship Wrestling for like years. He's actually like a big star there. We've gone to these shows like twice. People like have his T-shirts, they have like his merchandise. He's like a local star, at least for that indie promotion. Dude was part of a 6-man tag, like was running the ropes, was clear, like, because the classic like wrestling trope, at least modern trope, where like the one team, like all the guys are outside and they start crowding together. It's like, oh, they're gonna get dived on from inside the ring. He went to go do that, ran towards the ropes to dive, like cried out in pain, collapsed. And my wife and I were like, what happened? Is this like part of the show? It's like this bit, like he's faking an injury. And they carried him to the match. That they carried him from the match out to the backstage. And then the match ended randomly like 2 minutes later. And then he had like a merch table set up. And wife and I like were off to the side, but we could see like where the merch table was. Like a wrestler came from the back, like talked to the guy's like family. They like packed up the merch station and left. And it's like, oh, that's actually not part of the show. Like that guy actually got hurt. And my wife and I like were kind of obsessed with following the story. And on the Virginia Championship Wrestling like Facebook page, they noted that he actually like in the days after, he had to get like double like quadricep surgery. He must have like tore both his quads.
There's
but I cannot express to you how it's like if you and I like just one of us just started running and then just like collapsed. It was the most innocuous thing.
There was
but I guess he just moved wrong, planted wrong.
Yeah.
Like messed up both legs.
Both
legs.
There was a
what happened with Adam Cole.
Well, there was a quarterback for the Vikings. I can't remember his name right now, and I remember any other time. But a couple years ago, he just planted his leg to throw in practice and dislocated his knee so badly that if medical staff hadn't been on site, like they essentially saved his leg. That's how bad he dislocated his knee just from planning for a pass.
It's
like how so like it like cut off blood supply. Like why would he have lost?
I think it
leg?
like pinched the main artery, like when it dislocated. I don't remember. It's been a long time, and I can't remember his name.
That's real bad.
I know him too. Hold on, I have to look now.
I mean, here's the thing. Adam Cole broke his ankle just hopping down to the floor in a little hop that nobody thought anything of. It doesn't take a lot to have that kind of injury. And I would suspect, this is just me guessing at it, but those big hits that hit you, you know how you're supposed to react to those. You're like, oh, these are the big ones that are going to hurt me. So, tuck my chin or clench up or whatever it is I need to do when I know that big hit's coming. As opposed to that small one that hits you that you don't see coming, you don't prep for, you're just kind of relaxed and whack, there it goes. Honestly, that's probably what screwed my neck up, is that there would be like, and I would kind of let my head rock for it because I thought the cell was better. And that's probably part of what messed me up, is just the small stuff, not any of the big stuff.
Teddy Bridgewater. He dislocated his knee and tore his ACL.
ACL's like that's rough. You're talking about like a year.
The surgeon, they interviewed the surgeon afterwards, and he said it was one of the worst. He said it was one of the worst injuries he's ever seen. Like, it was just mangled, and that's just from stepping.
I know this is anecdotal, but from what I've been told, most of the stories you hear about rotator cuff surgery are not big things. It's like, oh, I reached in the back of my car from the front seat and tore it up or something like
No,
that.
that happens to construction workers. Like, I have a friend that and a relative that are physical therapists, and they said, like, you just see a ton of construction guys fine for years, and like they're 48 years old, and they just pick up a grocery bag in the trunk, and their back just is done. They can't work ever again, just from the repetitive stress of it.
Yeah. RSIs will get you every time.
Yeah. So this week wasn't, there's nothing like super memorable this week. I thought they were all interesting. The Regal Severn match is not good. Like I said, that one straight up pissed me off.
It didn't piss me off, but it's not good.
The ending kind of did, but
it should have been way better. But I guess if Regal being the state that he was, kind of makes sense that it was just
the train wreck of
20 plus minutes of rest holds. Yeah,
the how drunk he was interesting.
It pissed me off, but it wasn't them. It was that jerk off in the crowd.
Well, that woman, I wish I knew her name because she gets MVP for this episode.
I would have given her $10 and a folded chair and said, please go finish it. Just worth it.
Yeah. I thought Severn was interesting. Like I said, he had an aptitude for it. He wasn't as stiff like some MMA guys are.
Severn, for the big three, I guess, MMA guys of the era, in my mind anyway, Severn seemed to have the least upside. In my head, Shamrock, Blackman, and Severn all go into a similar category. And
Blackman was like a standard wrestler, really, though. Because, I mean, because remember, like, if you look at pictures of Blackman from the 80s, like, he looks like the thing you have to understand if you don't know Blackman's history. So he got malaria in like 91 or 92 from like a tour of South Africa. And he was essentially bedridden for 2 years and lost his entire muscle mass. Because if you look at him in like the 80s, he's a really big dude. Like you wouldn't even recognize him. And so he had to rebuild his entire body, so he got leaner. But he was bedridden for 2.5 years, I think. It was bad. Yeah.
But for me, those three guys are grouped together in my head. And I hate to say it, but was the one with the least upside of the three.
I don't get why WWE signed him.
I mean, it was working with Shamrock, and Severn was available. I get why they grabbed him.
But it's that era where, like, remember when they signed, like, Dr. Death Steve Williams? And, like, even as, like, a young fan at the time, I just didn't get it because, like, that's actually kind of funny as if you watch The Dark Side of the Ring on the Brawl for All. Like, Jim Cornette and Jim Ross almost come off as delusional when they're talking about Steve Williams, and Vince Russo, of all people, was like the voice of reason when he describes, like, because I think they were talking about all this stuff about Steve Williams, and Vince Russo was like, well, Williams was a great talent, but he's kind of like over the hill, and like, he was an acceptable casualty if it got someone else over. And I was like, wow, Vince Russo, like, you actually, because like the thing with Steve Williams in WWE is, well, they everyone bitched that he worked too stiff and he got hurt, but like, he just doesn't have that big WWE like presentation and charisma that they want and that their fans responds to.
He was such a wrong fit for that.
Yeah.
And Steve Williams in the 90s in All Japan was absolutely amazing. But he would go in there and he would work stiff, he would throw bombs, he'd beat the shit out of people, they'd beat the shit out of him. It was I saw a clip from a match that he had with, I don't know what the time frame from. It might have been actually like I feel like it was probably 90s, but it was an All Japan match he had with Stan Hansen. And Stan Hansen like Steve Williams picked him up and did the goddamn Oklahoma Stampede to Stan Hansen, like as big a dude. He did it, and then Stan Hansen like got out of it and like lariated the shit out of Steve Williams 1, 2, 3. It was the big meaty men slapping meat. It was just like two big dudes just beating the hell out of each other. But that wouldn't have worked in like late 90s, like Attitude Era WWF. Like it wasn't. Like he was so out of place, and they just didn't know what to do with him. He couldn't have worked. Like there's no way that it would have worked.
No,
But I'm in this place where could it have?
no.
Maybe, but I don't see it. It's
Terrible,
there are some people who are a
terrible
good fit for certain companies, and like for example, even if I don't watch the current product, I like Eli Drake. I like LA Knight. But he is exactly where he should be with the way he works and the way he presents himself. Okay, no harm, no foul. You know, good on him. He got to the place that's going to be the best fit. Now it's just about booking. But Steve Williams, not.
He doesn't have.
I don't know, man.
He doesn't have the right kind of charisma. I don't think like the WWE style at the time like was well fitting for him. He was like I don't want to say bland because I love Steve Williams. Steve Williams is a great worker, but he is not that mold of like WWE guy. Like he's bland by WWE standards.
Yes.
They would not. I don't want to say know how. I'm not saying that they would not know how to present him properly, but they wouldn't do it. If they had taken him over to Nitro and he started killing people and was gunning for,
He was what I would classify as like a WCW guy of that era.
But in that era, if he'd gone into WCW instead and he's murdering people and he's like ripping through NWO people to get to Kurt Hennig, who's got the U.S. title or something like that, totally believable. Like totally buy that. This is. Yeah, and I get where like Jim Ross is coming from on it, in that this is a guy who was very successful in the past, who made a lot of money, who is, this legit killer kind of guy. We know he's been successful. He can do it again. It's like, okay, but and for me, it just comes down to the fact that the Brawl for All never should have happened in the first place.
No,
so.
it was a dumb idea. It was
just
and
terrible.
then like they didn't even take advantage of Bart Gunn.
No, they just fed him to Butterbean and he got killed. So
yeah,
good. That made the whole
that,
thing pointless.
Well, no, I
mean, what?
They vindictively like tried to bury him over it.
Well, they did. Like that was the end of his effectively his WWF career. Like he still had like a semi decent career overseas in Japan. As what was he like? Was he Mike Barton?
Yeah.
Yeah, he still had like a decent enough career.
Speaking of Butterbean, I think DDP just got him mobile and shit again.
Yep, sure did.
Butterbean like not mobile?
He was all
way overweight, and not mobile, and now
like,
he's trimmed down a lot and capable again.
Couldn't like stand up straight. There's a YouTube video on it. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, DDP. DDP is such an altruist.
Yeah, I really.
If you want to be super, super cynical, you could argue that this is just marketing for his yoga, but I don't think it is. I think it is, but I also think that he does. I will say this: I hadn't even heard that he did this with Butterbean, so. It's not such effective marketing that it's like everyone's talking about this. So
no,
it's
Butterbean.
Like I also feel because altruistic. I do think he has an altruistic streak to him. I think he's a guy that was obviously he was in wrestling since the 80s as a manager, and cared about it enough that he wanted to actually get into it when he was way older than guys who would even like hope to actually step in the ring. Actually did it, and then did it. And actually was able to achieve enough that he actually even became like world champion And we talk about guys like, to take it like current, like Swerve Strickland actually became AEW champion, and it happened organically. By the time DDP became actually like world champ in WCW, it happened organically. Like, people were like totally down with it. To a guy who 5 years prior was probably like he was basically like a jobber to the stars almost.
His organic overness was such that if he was the guy that had ended Goldberg's streak, people would have been okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He should have ended it, I think.
And
But
that
he
would have
got-
been better.
I mean, he was getting over, but like Scott Hall and Savage really put him over the edge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He says Savage is the guy that made him. So I should be doing DDPY, but
I lost my disc.
Here's the thing.
They just sent me a discount code for like 40% off. I'm like, well, I could rebuy it.
The thing that gets me is because I've got the DVD copy of it.
No, I do too.
But the thing that gets me is that there is the leg lifts movement. There is something in the small of my back or at my pelvis or something like that whenever I get to a certain point, something there like slips or pops or something like that, and I just cannot. It is nightmarishly painful for me to hold it and then to move from there.
They gave me a 40% off coupon I might look at, but they give you a lot of stuff. Like they give you like levels you can work at, because you can do anything just from doing the yoga to like a straight up like hardcore like no carb diet that he like walks you through, and then there's the discs that there's like all sorts of stuff you get for it.
Yeah.
And
it's all on the app now.
Oh.
Well, the idea is that it's customizable that way. And I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, so you can kind of build your own thing.
Yeah. So we have a slate of upcoming shows. This is not going to be in any order. There's going to be probably some like intermediary episodes. So what we have coming up is we have a delightful look back at UFC 1. We're going to do a couple of those because I at least want to get to UFC 3. Because Shad and I talked about, because Shad remembered what I was talking about, how Hoist Gracie kind of got exposed by chemo, and that he wasn't invincible, just with a guy with a bit of skill and balance, like exhausted him to the point he had to back out of the tournament.
Yeah. We'll get to that one.
Yeah. So we did that. Friend of the show. Do you have the horn, Matt?
Oh, hang on. We can get that. Friend of the show.
Yeah. So that his first reaction was, is that the one where the guy just gets punched in the balls repeatedly? And I'm like, I think so.
Yeah, that.
But
because the first
balls repeatedly.
Yeah. So, but what's funny is I've started getting back into MMA, and I watched my first like UFC show like from start to finish, and like for the first time in like a decade, and it was really comforting to see that Herb Dean is still like an incompetent fuck that doesn't know when to like stop a fight, because it's a bad stuff. Well, so there's two things he did. So the one guy went for a knee and accidentally got the guy in the balls, so he stops the fight like he should do. But then he put them back in the same position with the guy that committed the foul in control, which makes no sense. The guy gets like KO'd. And it's a bad stop when like the one fighter kind of starts backing off, kind of looking at the ref like, okay, well, I guess I'll just keep like, can I stop punching him now? Like, when the fighter's like looking at the ref like, can I please like stop? And it's like, he's been doing this for like 40 years. And like, you can tell, that's the thing that upsets me when they do that, is you can tell, like, if you've watched any amount of UFC fights, like you can tell if a guy gets knocked down, if he is out, like immediately just by the way he's moving, versus, oh, he got rocked a bit, but he's defending himself and he's still with it. Like you can tell immediately, like there's a feel for when a guy's knocked out, because usually if they're still with it, they're defending themselves. And if they're out, they are either not doing anything or flailing. But yeah. So I was like, oh, it's comforting to see he's still a buffoon.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing UFC 1, then we're going to, celebrating, I don't know how many years, 30 years, we're doing a review of PCU coming up. That's like a mid-90s comedy. I'm interested to see what that's going to look like considering the current landscape, because that might be a little too on the nose now. But then we're going to do a two-parter. That might be the next thing we do, but I haven't committed yet. So it's going to be, one episode is going to be wrestlers who have tarnished their legacy, and then the other episode is going to be wrestlers who salvaged their legacy. And then we're going to also do an episode of like those early American Dragon Bryan Danielson matches.
Plenty to look forward to.
Yeah.
So everybody out there, we appreciate you joining us, whether you're on YouTube or listening to the podcast later. Thank you all very much. We love hearing from you. And so, this is Shad with Matt and Brad. We've been in 3 Corners. You're in the 4th.